On this edition of Independent Sources, visa cutbacks, the options being considered for legal immigrants to the U.S.
No limits. A Cuban-born artist reimagines New York City's skyline.
And the healing art, using the martial art of Taiji to battle cancer.
Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Gary Pierre-Pierre.
And I'm Abby Ashola. There are an estimated 6 million legal immigrants currently living in the United States, though it's been the 11 million or so living here illegally that have dominated the headlines. Legal immigrants have plenty to gain or lose as well, as the bipartisan group of Democratic and Republican senators called the Gang of Eight ponder immigration reform.
I sat down with Camille Mackler, the Director of Training and Technical Assistance at the New York Immigration Coalition. We spoke about several issues affecting legal immigrants to the country. One is a new visa that may be introduced under this reform. The other is a significant family category that may be eliminated. Camille, whenever we discuss the issue of immigration, it's usually around illegal immigration. Now, obviously, there are millions of people who are here legally. Now, give us any indication what would happen to legal immigrants into this country.
So I think that the debate right now has really, obviously there's been a lot of focus on the legalization of the 11 million undocumented, but really we're talking about reform across the board. And that means that not only this legalization program that takes up so much space in the news, but changes to employment-based immigration, to the visas, the numbers allocated, the manner in which they're allocated, potentially changes to family-based immigrants, immigration visas, and even non-immigrant visas, which are temporary visas, like the H-1B, of course, is the best well-known one. We're definitely looking at changes at those as well.
Well, you've put out a laundry list of categories. Let's start with the HB1 visa?
H-1B, right.
H-1B visa. And tell our viewers what that is and why is it in play?
The H-1B visa is a visa for professionals, meaning that it's a visa for people who have usually bachelor's degrees, at a minimum a bachelor's degree, and who are involved in a profession. And the big issue with them is that they have been really the only means for people who are here to study, or let me say the principal mean for people who come here and study to remain in the United States and have jobs unless they have a family member or an employer willing to sponsor them for a green card. And H-1Bs have been capped. There's 65,000 available every year. The last few years that cap has been met, but not until much later on. But for years before that, and again, we're expecting this year, the cap is met within the first couple of days of applications being accepted for that particular fiscal year. And the H-1B cap has been very much a sore point because it really limits the amount of employees, of skilled workers that U.S. employers can hire.
Let's talk about the skilled worker program. It's called, it's known by its acronym STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. These are highly skilled people that this country is in dire need for more. And so there might be limits under this reform, or they're gonna, is the idea is to increase those STEM visas?
So actually we don't have STEM visas right now, but STEM visas has definitely been the term that you've been hearing a lot about because STEM fields, like you just said, are so critical to our country, and over half of graduate students in STEM fields in the United States are actually foreign born, but they have no way to stay in the United States. And President Obama actually used the term stapling the green card to the visa, to the diploma,
okay.
The diploma, right. Whereas these students who would come here and study, if they were able to get employment in STEM fields, would then have some way of staying in the United States and even obtaining a green card, which is a permanent residency. And that's been talked about for a long time, and that's definitely been one of the most encouraging parts of this debate, is that people are finally recognizing, our politicians are finally recognizing the need, because right now we are educating these students and we are giving them the best education they can hope for, and then we're sending them home so that they're competing against us. So STEM visas is definitely a big hot topic and something that we should absolutely be able to expect to see.
And another one of your lists I want to touch upon is the family visa issue.
Yes, the family visa issue. Right now, there has been a lot of tension between labor and family immigration advocates, with labor feeling that employment-based visas are not sufficiently available because family gets so many, whereas most advocates want more family-based visas. And right now, family-based visas are actually incredibly backlogged. If you're not the parent, spouse, or minor child of a U.S. citizen, you're looking at years and years of waits.
About 10 years or so?
10 to 20 in some cases, or even longer. It's just, they're awfully backlogged. And we actually found out that the Senate might be contemplating reducing not the numbers, but the categories, so that adult children of U.S. citizens, married children of U.S. citizens, and brothers and sisters of U.S. citizens would actually no longer be able to be petitioned for. And that is of huge concern, because family unity has always been a cornerstone of U.S. policy. And we want to make sure that families can be united, and can be united in a reasonable time frame.
Who's the advocate for the so-called legal immigrants here? Who's leading the fight on their behalf to make sure that their views are taken into account?
Well, they have, a lot of unions, a lot of labor groups and business groups especially, because business groups, when we think of legal immigrants, really we're thinking of people who came here to study and to work. And so business entities have been, pushing to be able to sort of free up this workforce and be able to hire. But unions have actually been quite involved. Actually, it was...
Well, usually that's kind of counterintuitive, because oftentimes what we read and hear about is a union against legal immigration, because it competes with the workforce, American workforce.
Yep, but for the first time this year, we see the AFL-CIO has been working with the Chamber of Commerce. Those are the two main groups. Obviously, we'd like to see more people get involved in this particular debate, but they haven't reached an agreement, but they seem to be working, understanding that providing a guest worker program of sorts, or providing for some of that sort of skilled, but labor and the more blue-collar fields like construction and whatnot, actually would benefit the U.S. economy and would benefit the workforce here, because it would create sort of a wage floor. Nobody could be exploited anymore. The wages wouldn't be able to be driven down. So it is to the advantage of U.S. workers.
We hear often the term taking care of the people who did it the right way, who came in legally. And how many of these people are there? And are they going to be recompensated for doing it right?
So that kind of conversation actually promotes this myth that there's a line that some people chose to get into and some people didn't. And that's not the case. The people who came here who are undocumented today just had no other option. It wasn't like they just decided to ignore what other people did. How many? I'm not aware of any numbers. They don't really put out statistics that way. But certainly we are going to be seeing changes across the board. And it's just that the 11 million undocumented, they've been living in the shadows. They've been having such a struggle that they end up making, the news more often. But we are going to see changes. The H-1B, there's been talks of eliminating the cap. Other non-immigrant visas, people who come here on management visas, artist, performer visas, investment visas, would have an easier time of renewing their visas. Right now they have to go home to do it. They could do that from the United States. Creating STEM visas, creating entrepreneurial visas for people who create jobs in the United States. So I think across the board we're going to see people getting a lot of relief.
And who's at the top of the priority list?
We haven't seen much of, I wouldn't say we've seen a prioritization, but definitely STEM fields and entrepreneurs. Workers in STEM fields and entrepreneurs have received a lot of attention. And in fact, there's a bill pending right now, a bill called the I-Squared Act that's pending in the Senate. Probably won't see any action until the fall at least. But that really emphasizes, although it makes minor changes, like I mentioned, to these other visas, it really emphasizes the STEM and the STEM fields and the entrepreneurial visas.
Will the priority be for the legal immigrants, those who are here, I don't even know how to say it legally, will they take a priority in terms of processing their paperwork and changing their status?
I think, again, I don't think it's going to be a priority. I think it's going to be a change across the board. So there's going to be some departments of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services that will deal with one issue, others that will deal with another. I think that's the area that's going to receive most likely the least amount of debate and the most amount of consensus.
Why is that?
Because the language in the Senate proposal, the one, when they put out their statement of principles last month, we saw that, they very clearly said that none of the undocumented would be able to apply for any kind of permanent residency until the backlogs were cleared. And they used language such as, you're mentioning of wanting to first give priority, I guess, really, to those who have been waiting in line, who have been playing, by the rules. Although I don't like that expression, but.
Well, on that note, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Camille.
Thank you.
Still to come on the show, one artist reshapes some of New York City's most famous buildings.
Before that, Zyphus LeBrun has some other news.
Thanks, Gary. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic and community media. From El Diario La Prensa, Fresh Direct's plans to build its new headquarters in the Bronx has some area residents weighing the pros and cons of that proposal. On one hand, Fresh Direct will create close to 1,000 jobs in the borough, where the unemployment rate is the highest in the city. On the other hand, the new location would likely usher in heavy traffic and pollution. This is a major concern since the Bronx has the highest rates of asthma in the country. 20% of children in Mott Haven suffer with the condition. South Bronx Unite, a coalition of residents, organizations, and allies for the area, have sued the large grocer to stop them from coming to the borough. Meanwhile, the city has already offered Fresh Direct a $127 million package in cash and tax breaks to choose the Bronx instead of New Jersey for its new location. Queens Latino reports a new study finds that Hispanic women in New York City are facing increased social and financial hardships. According to the study completed by CUNY's Center for Latin American, Caribbean, and Latino Studies, Latinas get divorced more frequently than non-Latinas. The research also finds that only 16% of Latin women receive four-year college educations, compared to 38% for non-Hispanic women. The statistics also showed that Latinas earn significantly less than other immigrant women. In other immigration news, is immigration policy sexist? Pramila Jayapal of Color Lines thinks so. In an op-ed piece for the website, Jayapal calls immigration policy sexclusionary. She writes that women are portrayed as, quote, helpless victims of detention or deportation or conniving leeches responsible for anchor babies. Jayapal recommends several ways that immigration reform can support women. These include recognizing the work that women do as legitimate and making the U.S. a safe haven for survivors of violence and human trafficking. She also says the government shouldn't make women wait several years to unite with their families, as 70% of women who immigrate to the country do so through family sponsorship. And finally, immigrant small business owners in Sheepshead Bay say the area has been left out of the recovery from Hurricane Sandy. According to the Brooklyn Bureau, 40% of close to 100 businesses in Sheepshead Bay impacted by Sandy may not be able to reopen. The Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce recently held a meeting for the struggling businesses in the area. The Chamber of Commerce says they've been encouraging people to shop in Sandy-stricken communities. They're hoping business picks up in the spring and summer months. Those were just a few stories making headlines this week. Back to Abby and Gary.
Thanks, Zyphus. Alexandre Arechea is a Cuban-born artist known for thinking big. This time, he's brought his unique artistic style to New York City.
The No Limits exhibit features 10 iconic city buildings that have been warped in some way. Some of the pieces go as high as 20 feet.
Vianora Vinca spoke with Arechea about the pieces that are on display along Park Avenue between 53rd and 67th Street.
Alexandre, tell us a little bit about what went through your mind as an artist when you thought of this project.
No Limits project. With No Limits project happened something that was a good coincidence, because at the moment when I applied to the Park Avenue Committee with this project, I was also in some way trying to improve my work that I've been doing for already several years. So that's why I say it was a good coincidence, because the time when I applied for the project, I was trying to, in some way, do some changes to my work, and those changes that were focused in this idea of, because I basically work with architecture as a subject matter, and what I did was try to involve that work that I was doing and try to create this connection of the architecture with other events. And those other events are like, for instance, you know, the economy, how to link architecture, I mean, at least the artwork that I do based on architecture to the economy. And in this way, I created these several projects that deal with the idea of linking the architecture to the increases and decreases of the Dow Jones, for instance. So I created this project, which is for me the point of departure for what came after, which is this house that contract and expand depending of how is the economy during the day. So that's departing from that point. I think everything else, you know, was in some way easy to me, and that's why I decided to, after my gallery advised me to apply for this Park Avenue committee. You know, I felt comfortable that I can actually bring something beautiful to the New Yorkers. Why
did you title the project No Limit?
Well, No Limits is precisely related to this idea of when I first visited New York for the first time, I saw a city that in some way has no limits. And for me, try to link my work with the idea of New York in the sense of a city that doesn't have any limits was perfect to me, because especially my work is dealing with this idea of the constant change of things. So to have no limitation in those changes was for me a perfect idea for the title.
You've had a similar project in Cuba, where you're from, with buildings, and tell us more about how this idea of linking architecture and power reflected in that project that you have.
Well, yeah, there is one thing that I always have been pursuing with my work, which is sometimes we feel like we are indispensable. And I think at some point we are not that much so indispensable in some way. And in a way, I created a project back in 2009-10, which was titled The City That Stopped Dancing. And this idea was to set, you know, well-known landmarks, architecture, from around the world, including the city of Havana, of course, at the time, in which I placed these buildings, famous buildings, on top of spinning tops. And in some way, my idea was to create this sensation that if you don't spin the spinning top, then everything fails, because a city is meant to be, you know, constantly moving, and if we are not able to make it move, then we are done. And so for me, as an idea of creating this this relation between the verticality of the architecture, that in some ways is related to power. You know, the tallest the building, the powerful is the person who built it, or the money behind it. I mean, we can fail, and that in some way what I was trying to bring. I mean, you know, we can mention like many recent events that prove that you know, the Western society in some way have been under attack, and in some way we feel, or at least we have experienced fear in some way recently.
These buildings that you've created, these works that you've created and placed on Park Avenue, are also fusing the structure, the architectural structure, with a spinning, some sort of a spinning top. Is that true?
Yeah, it's linking the architecture to the spinning top, so they are one body. But this body, of course, have this, or at least contain this moment in which, like I was trying to explain, that if the spinning top stops spinning, then everything stops. So one of the things that I brought for Park Avenue project was this metaphor in some way that people should interact with my pieces. It's not only about placing sculptures there that people are, will be seeing. It's also about to participate. And if my idea was to bring those spinning tops of that first experience that I had, but with buildings of New York. So at the time you see those two spinning tops that I place here on Park Avenue, you're gonna see that you can make them rotate. So in some way for me it's a metaphor, so to keep the city going on, to keep the city going. So so that's something that I envisioned since the first time, to create these two structures that become one single thing, and in some way it's a metaphor.
A number of artists have helped you to create this project. Was it 20 or so artists?
Yeah,
can you tell us more about them?
Yeah, I've been helped by many people, from welders to artists to my gallery, to my family, of course, that have been so patient with me. For me, one of the things, and I have to explain this because it's important for me, it's not only about to build an artwork, it's about to create a community. And in some way, I feel, or I have the sensation that while we were all creating or building this project, we were inhabiting those buildings in some way. And being helped by artists also, you will always feel that, how humble people are when are willing to help you and, put aside whatever other protagonism sometimes artists we all want to have. And, that's sort of a humble thing is something that for me have been very meaningful. And also, I have learned a lot out of that, definitely.
Alexandre Arecea,
Yes.
It was great speaking with you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Arecea's work will continue to be displayed along Park Avenue until June 9th.
When we come back, a martial arts master with healing hands.
You realize that 49 million Americans struggle with hunger? That's 1 out of every 6 Americans.
These people are around us every day. They're our friends, they're our coworkers, their kids go to school with our kids.
Sometimes we're not even aware that they're struggling. This problem is closer than you think. But so is the solution.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Finally from us, from martial art to healing art, Taiji is making inroads into integrative medicine departments of major hospitals. Taiji master Yang Yang holds a PhD in kinesiology, the study of human movement.
He's been working with Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center to deliver supportive care and new healing therapies to patients. Judith Escalona filed this report.
Taiji is an ancient Chinese martial art that's found a new home in some of America's leading medical establishments. Yang Yang, a Taiji master from China, has made it his mission to reintroduce the 1,000-year philosophy and form to the West as a healing art.
The goal of my practice is to continue to work through class, through teaching, and the research to find the efficacy and the mechanism of this ancient practice, and also to reach out to a big population to help their daily life.
Yang should know he was a sickly child who was banned from physical activity in elementary school because of his illness. He learned Taiji to manage his condition.
I was born with congenital heart condition. Then the doctor told my family I could not live too long, and my family just said, well, because we're so close to the Chen village, so many people are doing Taiji to improve your health, and how about let's start a Taiji and see what happens.
What happened was that practicing the art daily gave him a new lease on life.
The physical change started about 2 years after I started. You feel you're getting stronger and stronger, and then later I find out I could do wrestling with the big boys.
Eventually, Yang went on to college in Shanghai, where he competed against professional martial artists, winning 3 championships. His personal experience opened him up to Taiji's healing potential and spurred his desire to help others. Yang moved to the U.S. and received a Ph.D. in kinesiology from the University of Illinois in Champaign, where he began his scientific research into the health benefits of Taiji, developing what he calls evidence-based Taiji.
So evidence-based here means we designed the program and we look at the efficacy of this program through scientific research. One of the examples is randomized controlled trial. In this case, we look at what's the effect of this specific program on balance. And we also did a study on immune function and strength and cognition.
The test groups in Champlain showed marked improvement in all 4 areas.
The study we recruited, the age range was from 65 to 95. The average age in that group was 80.
At the Integrative Medicine Department of Memorial Sloan Kettering, one of the preeminent cancer hospitals in the U.S., Dr. Gary Deng sees the role of Taiji and other healing methods as complementing Western medical practices.
We take a holistic approach to people's health and incorporate some of the unconventional therapies to help cancer patients improve their life. We look at patients as a whole rather than a disease process. There is a lot of focus on the interaction between body, mind, and spirit, and how we can strengthen both the body, the mind, and the spiritual needs of the patients.
Deng says there's still much research to be done to prove Taiji's effectiveness in healing and enhancing a patient's quality of life. Taiji Master Yang, he believes, has the necessary experience and skills to bring this work to fruition.
He is a very accomplished Tai Chi master. His practice and his way of teaching is very effective. On the other hand, he also had experience in doing research, clinical studies, and in this modality.
So far, Yang has seen marked improvements in cancer patients and the elderly. He says the healthy and young can also benefit from practicing Taiji. I'm Judith Escalona, Independent Sources.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned.
Till next time, be independent-minded.